So we're live now.
Good evening all and welcome to this meeting of the West Craven Area Committee. This is a Pendle Council meeting subject to the rules of the council and the law of the land. I'm going to ask... 10 seconds. And my lips didn't even move when I said that, did they? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting. I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves, and I'll just start with myself. I'm trying to cope with a cat, so forgive me. If it switches me off, then, I'll leave you to it, really. My name's David Whip. I'm a councillor for Barnoldswick in this respect, and I chair the area committee. And going off my screen, can I ask Margaret Adams to introduce herself?
Marjorie Adams, Pendle Councillor for Courts Ward, Barnoldswick.
Mike Goulthorpe.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm the councillor for AB Ward in Pendle Borough.
Tom.
Evening. I'm a councillor for Courts Ward.
Jane.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Courts Ward councillor for Barnoldswick.
Ken.
Evening, everybody. Ken Hartley, councillor for Craven Ward, Barnoldswick.
And I should say that Ken's Pendle's mayor, so he takes precedence over all of us. And when they print the minutes, his name goes at the top. So I should have asked him to introduce himself first. Given the pandemic, Ken's mayoral duties have been sadly curtailed. So I think we should just sort of give him a bit of an outing as mayor on this occasion.
Thanks, Chairman.
I realise he'd appreciate that. Rosemary.
Rosemary Carroll, Ward Councillor for AB Ward.
Joanne.
Joanne Eccles, the Committee Administrator at Pendle Council.
David.
Good evening. David Walker, Environmental Services Manager, Area Coordinator.
Okay, I've got Colin.
Good evening, Colin Carter, AB Ward Councillor.
Thank you. Tim.
Yes, Tim Hitchin. I'm the Neighbourhood Sergeant covering the West Craven area. I am joining this meeting from home, and I don't normally work in clothing like this.
Okay, well, we can't see your clothing, so you could be stark naked. I'm not suggesting that you are.
Please, that's not.
Right, and I've got one now, which always thrills me, is Governor Pollard.
Christine Pollard, Salford Parish Council.
Thank you. Neil Wallin.
Local Community Officer for Barnoldswick, all wards of Bolridge.
Thank you very much. And Neil Watson, Pendle's Planning Manager, will be joining us later in the meeting for items further down the agenda, but he's gone to a meeting about the local plan. So we'll let him off until it gets to that point of the agenda. Before I get on to the...
Chair, you forgot David Walker, I think.
And you forgot me as well.
Sorry, Jennifer. I can't see your icon.
What icon?
Well, exactly.
Well, I'm here.
All right. Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Jennifer Purcell, Craven Ward Councillor for Barnoldswick, Pendle Borough Council.
And David Walker, I'm sure I did ask you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. You did, Chair, thank you. Already done.
Right. For goodness sake. Right. This cat's going to get evicted. Right. the agenda, I have 2 items that I have agreed to take as urgent items due to pressing time constraints. And the first one, which I'll take in part 1 of the agenda, is in regard to water supply to part of Gisborne Road, Bonalswick. And the reason for urgency is due to the fact that residents have commenced replacing a joint water pipe and have found that the Yorkshire water supply to that joint supply pipe is inadequate. So we'll take that in due course. And the other, which I will take in part 2, due to pending judicial proceedings, is in respect of street naming. And Mr. Morsdale has asked the area committee to consider that issue. So that will be in part 2 with press and public excluded. I've got apologies from Emma West, the representative from Bonalswick Town Council. Are there any further apologies, please? No. Item 1, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest on the agenda items? Nope. Item 2 is public question time. And we do have a question that's been submitted. I'll put that up on screen and read it out. And here we go. And unfortunately, the cat's been busy on the keyboard, so I'll just get rid of the cat's contribution. And the question is, please could you ask for a review of parking around Coniston Avenue and Frederick Street? People are double parking on the bend. This then makes it a blind bend, which is dangerous in itself. However, it's becoming increasingly difficult for bin wagons, emergency services, and also delivery wagons such as Sainsbury's, Asda, etc. to get through. I understand the need for people to park. However, if double yellow lines could just be on the bend to stop double parking, I feel that would be a lot safer for all. Could I suggest that we refer that to the traffic liaison meeting between Pendle Council and Lancashire County Council and ask for a report back to this committee? Are councillors agreeable with that suggestion? Ken?
Yeah.
Marjorie, was that you?
No, I was just saying yes, I agree.
Thank you. Right, I've got Ken and then Jane who have indicated.
I was just going to second that motion.
Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, so was I. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, I've not been notified of any further questions for public question time. No. We'll move on then to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting.
Move those, Chairman.
Thank you very much. They are moved as a correct record. Would somebody second that?
Councillor Carter has seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thanks, David. Right, are we content with those? Anybody rising in violent objection? No. We'll move on then. Item 4, police and community safety issues. And we are blessed with Tim Hitchin and Neil Walling here this evening. So am I going to ask Tim to come in on this one?
Could I just ask Neil to read out the crime stats first of all, because I don't have a copy of those myself.
Okay. Tom has very
Is that the
kindly.
one?
Those are on screen.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, they're the ones. Yep.
Neil, your boss is saying you need to report on these.
I need to report on them. Thanks, boss.
Neil, I can't see them on screen, that's all.
You
I don't know
can't?
if anybody else. No.
Right. The one thing, am I okay to speak then?
Yes, please, Neil.
Yeah, the things what stand out the most, as you'll see for this February, is theft in Coatswold of 21 incidents. That's the big standout point. But I just want to make you aware that that was all from the Strand petrol station with reported drive-offs, all reported at one time. What these have happened over a long period of time. Some of them drives off, some of them just failed to pay because they haven't been asked if they've gotten the fuel. So that's the high figure there. If you've noticed that one.
Neil, could I ask you, say they've been happening over a long period of time?
Yeah, they see what they've done is a new boss has appeared at the Strand where they said you've got to report everything. So they've got a backlog of crimes and reported it all at once, separately, but all in the same day, which took our theft figures sky high to 21.
And
they've all been.
How long a period of time are you looking at?
Sergeant Hidgy could say that because he's been to the Strand and spoken to management. So.
I can, Neil. That they're actually for just over a month's period.
Right.
I've been down to speak with the shop manager. It's at the direction of their area manager, who is new to this area or this role. And basically what they've done as a blanket policy is any transactions that haven't been paid for whatever reason, and a lot of those are the wrong buttons been pressed, people haven't been asked if they've had fuel when they've come into the shop to buy other items, they've all been roped in under drive-offs. We've dip sampled the majority of them, and they're not what you would class as a criminal act of theft. I've been and spoken to the manager. There are different ways to sort their problem out through the civil matters, and they've been advised about that. But as Neil pointed out, that is the huge rise that you would see in thefts. They've virtually all come from that one location, and that's something we shouldn't be seeing repeating in the next couple of months if the store manager is true to her word, which I'm sure she is.
Okay, so I think the message there is this is bureaucracy rather than 24 thefts all of a sudden, and in that respect we ought not to be getting overly concerned.
Yeah, there's certainly no need to be concerned about it. I would say that probably from what I've seen, 95% of those should be a civil debt. I've given them advice on how they can recoup that debt through different organisations, but unfortunately they're all reported to as a crime. Our policy is, from the government national crime recording standards, that if somebody rings up to report a crime, we have to record it. So all those are recorded as crimes,
Okay.
and they will just stay as that, unfortunately, because we can't just get rid of them quite so easily. But there isn't anything to worry about, and that isn't a sudden increase in theft-related offences in that ward area.
Thank you. Neil, is there anything further that you wanted to add about the figures?
Well, no, we just obviously you can see down below that there's a high number of COVID breaches. What we've reported COVID breaches will always get investigated by a specific COVID car, and unknown if tickets were issued at these events. But they're just a one-off while the pandemic's on. Yeah, so it's just somebody says that about more than 3 people in the house and they shouldn't be there. They asked us to come and have a look. So
Okay, thank you very much. Right, there's 3 people who've indicated to speak. 4 people indicating that they want to speak. And I thought I saw Ken's hand go up earlier on as well. So Ken, did you want to ask about the figures?
Thank you, Chairman. No, Neil explained it. I thought that we'd been having a whole load of ram raids somewhere around the patch that, it is the crime figures and the ones that were associated with SPA. So I'm quite content to accept the figures as they are.
Thank you very much. Right, sticking to the figures, Jennifer, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, this is for you, Neil. Good evening and nice to see you. Now then, the problem I've got is last Tuesday, a boy racer coming down from between the police station junction, come tearing down there. He must have been doing about 50 miles an hour, went straight through the other traffic lights. We couldn't get it, but it looked like a black Ford car with yellow markings. It was horrendous. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Then he turned round, he must have turned round somewhere, then come up again and went straight across onto Raynall Road. That needs investigating. I don't know who it is. I couldn't get the number. He was going that fast. And the person with me was shocked at what they had seen as well. The other one is, have we got any update on the Victory Park? How's it going on down there?
Thank you. We'll come on to community safety issues in a minute. If we can just restrain the questions to the crime figures that have been provided. So we'll come on to those 2 issues in a little while. So questions about the figures as presented. Tom, have you got a question about the figures?
Specifically, it is about the Spa garage. I mean, I know someone who works there, and there has been a couple of occasions that they've told me about incidents that have been there. I think the ATM machine was once ripped out, and there has been a break-in at another time as well. So I know that this sort of increase, you've explained that, but I mean, there obviously is crime at that Spa garage, and it does seem to be more frequent than elsewhere. I mean, I can kind of see why a new manager might want to have reported these if there hasn't been any action taken in the past from those.
Well, all I can say on the Spa garage, any nuisance, anything attempt to damage, to rip out, should always be reported. Nuisance, people walking there being abusive. If we don't get reported, unless we witness it, we're none the wiser to it. It's really important that they record it with the police. So that's all I say about it. There's loads going on. We need to be knowing. Okay. And just telling you is good, but it needs to be telling us as well.
Yeah,
and they have our details, which is good. But I encourage them to report everything.
Okay. Neil, I don't think Tom's suggesting that, somebody ripping the ATM machine out wouldn't have been reported. I think
I know that. I'm just saying as a whole, I'm sure they would report it. I'm just saying other little things, anything attempts to damage it or anything like that,
Yeah.
They just need to report it to us, yeah.
Tim, do you want to come back in again?
Yeah, just I'm not aware of the ATM being ripped out or a burglary this month.
No.
I'll go from right.
Yes. Yeah. I think the point that Tom was trying to make was
in the past year
there has been, serious issues centred at the Spa, so it could be the locus for criminal activity, a hotbed of yes. Anyway, right, Jane, do you want to ask something about the figures?
Thank you, Chairman. It's excuse me, in relation to the antisocial behaviour figures, comparing this month with the same month last year. With the amount of COVID-related incidents, it's basically doubled the amount of antisocial behaviour. And Neil sort of mentioned that it could be possibly, 3 people gathering and things like this, but there has been a lot of reports on social media regarding incidents to do with vandalism and all sorts of things. And I just wonder if this is a bit more than just 3 people wandering around doing whatever they're doing. Are there groups of young people with time on their hands that are causing all this trouble in the locality? I just wondered the police's take on that and what is being done to try and sort it. Thank you.
I think I can probably answer that. Looking at, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but if I remember rightly from looking at the figures, the way it's been broken down, I think somebody did ask that this month's set of figures reflected the huge increases we've seen in ASB and how many of those were COVID related. The way we record those figures, from what I can remember, is that if you take the COVID reports out, ASB remains fairly similar to this month of last year. The COVID reports are just classified under ASB because there's no other criteria or no other category that they decided they're going to go into. And the very nature of anything COVID related can be neighbours reporting issues where people have been round at the next door neighbour's house having a party, groups of children congregating. It can also be in relation to the immigration services and the border agencies telling us about or asking us to do checks on people who are supposed to be self-isolating having come into the country. So the actual COVID reports themselves are just whatever comes into us, and we can't say whether that's groups of youths, families breaching COVID. I would suggest that, and this is probably just my personal opinion, that there are far more breaches of the COVID regulations than are actually reported to us. But on the whole, the vast majority of people are abiding by it. And obviously, as we look on the news, that the figures have started to come down, whether that's through vaccination or other inputs. So hopefully that answers your question in relation to the COVID figures and how we report them into an ASB category.
Thank you. Rosemary, on the figures?
Yeah, you've more or less answered my question, but I just wanted to clarify that the non-COVID, are they all antisocial behaviours?
Yes, I think the way the figures have been split, the way Jeff's done them, is you've got, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but 27 seems to ring a bell for either non-COVID or COVID. But any of the other figures, once you've taken the COVID figures out, would relate to antisocial behaviour, which is nuisance and calls of that nature. So it's very much down to the call taker deciding, based on the information they get from the caller, what category they put it into. But for ASB, it tends to be what you would think of as antisocial behaviour nuisance.
Thank you very much for that. Can I ask if there's any further questions on the figures? If not, we'll go on to community safety issues. And a couple of things have already been mentioned. First of all, boy racers razzing around in rather inadequate vehicles, but driving them rather irresponsibly. Neil, Tim, do you want to comment on that?
I can probably comment on that. I know through being in any area, West Craven, Pendle, the Nelson areas, you will always get a number of people who at one period of time or another will exceed the speed limit. They'll have a loud exhaust. Sometimes it appears, the perception is that they're going faster than they are. And we get this past the police station at home from time to time with a particularly noisy vehicle. I'm going to push the Lancashire talking system that we're looking at the moment. We're trying to recruit as many people as possible to sign up to that. But one of the things that's coming back from that is they're asked to answer a few questions. There's a survey regarding what they feel are the issues in their ward area. We then get those figures, which are updated usually every month. And then we try and tailor those particular issues to our monthly priorities. Road safety and speeding does feature in the vast majority of ward area problems. We're actually running a couple of pops at the moment. One particular one is a borough road safety. We've got the very kindly donated West Craven laser speed detection device, which we're still running, is currently calibrated. And we had used prior to Christmas. COVID restrictions have curtailed us a little bit, and the weather hasn't helped. But now the better weather's coming and restrictions are starting to ease, we will be out and about with that. We will prioritise West Craven initially, but we do have to share the work out around all the boroughs. I've also spoken to a friend of mine who works with VOSA, which is the Vehicle Standards Agency. They have done roadside stop checks with us in the past. We're looking to carry out some more of those in the coming months, but unfortunately their restrictions mean that they aren't allowed to come out to anything other than their own authorised check sites at the moment, but that will be something that we will do again, hopefully through the spring into the summer once the restrictions are eased. If anybody has any particular ideas about other road safety issues, we're willing to listen. And basically what we need is people to sort of report back to us and let us know through Lancashire Talking with that two-way messaging system of any particular problem roads. And we've got to be realistic that having seen one car on one road at one time doesn't necessarily create a problem, but a regular occurrence in certain areas. And I am aware of a number of speeding vehicles through Suff into Earby. We've tried to look at before, and again, something we will be concentrating on. One particular vehicle that was identified to us as speeding in that location, we weren't able to deal with that car for speeding, but there were certain issues around the insurance and modifications to that car, which meant it was seized, and that person was dealt with for that. So there's, without wanting to upset your furry friend David, there are more than one way to skin a cat, and we will deal with these matters as we see the best way we can.
Yeah, fortunately, the cat in question has settled down on my county council laptop keyboard now, and it is. Oh no, hang on a minute, I shouldn't have mentioned it. It's sat back up again. Just on the question of the vehicles razzing around, I mean, it's quite often that on social media the same vehicles are identified, and I trust that people are actually making reports through to the police about those vehicles. How regularly do you get reports of that nature, which you can then act on?
They're fairly few and far between, to be honest. I do remember one relating to a Subaru last year that we got, I think, potentially 2 calls. I think that was a red Subaru, 2 to 3 calls about. Other than that, it's very rare that we get the same vehicle reported on different occasions. A lot of the times the vehicle can't be identified. This vehicle, with it being black and having yellow bits on it, might make it stand out a little bit more. If we can get a registration number, we can go and have a look at that vehicle. But again, potentially 75 to 90% of the time it will drive around within the speed limit, and then it will just exceed the speed limit on certain occasions. So it's difficult for us to catch them in the act. If anybody's got CCTV footage or dashcam footage, we can potentially prosecute from good quality CCTV footage if it captures the registration number, if it captures the offence being committed. And I know that's happened in the past. I was just speaking to a colleague of mine yesterday around one in Nelson, where they had such good dashcam footage that they were looking to prosecute this person for a dangerous driving offence. And we will happily do that if the evidence is there and if the footage is suitable to take to potentially Crown Court for a dangerous driving offence.
And you're advised then, if people do have either a witness account or evidential, dash camera, CCTV, what should they do?
Purely witness evidence is very difficult for us to get over the threshold for CPS. So in effect, to be able to deal with something properly for an isolated incident of excessive speed, dangerous driving, a breach of a stop sign or a red traffic light, ideally we will be looking for decent quality CCTV. Now, the dash cams tend to be the thing that's going to provide that evidence, and they are excellent quality. If somebody has that, they feel strongly enough that the offence that's been committed, if they can get us a copy of that dash cam footage, let us assess it and see if there is sufficient to prosecute. If they're willing to provide a statement to say they've seen that and will produce that footage as evidence and will go to court, then we will take that and we will prosecute somebody for it.
Okay, and the process whereby people report this, is it via 101? Is there a dedicated part of the constabulary's website?
I think potentially there is a dedicated area of the constabulary website where people are encouraged to send in dashcam footage. I would suggest if it's local, if it fits the criteria we've talked about, it's good quality footage that can identify the registration number, the vehicle, and the offence committed. I'd be more than happy if that's reported on 101. We'll have a look at that locally and try and deal with that locally. I'm not anticipating that we're going to get a huge number. So the individual incidents that are reported to us, I would be happy to have a look at, and we will deal with those locally through the neighbourhood team.
Thank you very much. Now, whilst you were talking, Ken, who had indicated disappeared, his hand disappeared, should I say? Ken, did you want to come in on this?
No, it's exactly the same subject. Okay. I was sort of beaten up, if you like, on my way to full council meeting last Thursday by a black Audi stroke BMW, I can't tell you which, it was a fairly large vehicle, that overtook me heading out of Barnoldswick between the Spa-Kelbrook Road service station and the West Craven High School. And by the time I crested the brow of the hill, he was disappearing around the bend on the other side of Salterfirth. Incredible speed. He had to swerve in and cut me off to get inside the bollards on his way out of Barnoldswick. I didn't report it because I didn't get a number and I couldn't say whether it was an Audi or a BMW. All I knew was it was a big black car, and it was very, very loud. It sounded more like a motorbike, than it did a motor car. But I have noticed, and I want to record this with the police in this meeting, that the incidences of very loud, high-revving motors outside that strand on Skipton Road is increasing. I must have heard 4 or 5 different cars just revving up at the Strand, as they get in and out, switch on their engines, switch off their engines, fool around, do whatever it is they're doing over the last 2-week period. It is far more now and has been over the last 2 weeks than I've ever noticed it before. But it is a focal point. It does seem to be a focal point for whatever reason. But, it could be an area just to keep an eye on. Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, I think you're right. And many years ago, just after I left school, I worked on a petrol station when they used to have petrol pump attendants. And I know that the petrol stations were always a meeting point for enthusiasts of rally cars, of the motorbikes, and it does attract that kind of people just because they go to fuel up, to pick up certain supplies before they disappear off.
Okay, thanks, Chair. It's just that I say I couldn't report it because it all happened at a rather inopportune time.
We've lost Sergeant Hitchin speaking, but we can't hear him.
Yeah.
Louder with a basically straight through pipe. A lot of those, or predominantly the majority of those, are actually non-standard. They're not authorised for road use, but it's very difficult to tell which ones are and which ones aren't. But it is something that can affect somebody's insurance. And as I mentioned before, for the car at Suff, that was part of the offence that we looked at, among other things, that modifications have been made to cars. And it is quite popular nowadays with younger drivers to lower the suspension, fit bigger wheels and tyres on, different exhausts, and a lot of those can affect the insurance. So we do look at those from time to time, but obviously we've got to pick and choose because it takes quite a while, and we're at the behest of the insurance companies as to whether they want to prosecute, which isn't always the case, unfortunately.
Thank you. Hopefully moving on from vehicles, I've got Jane.
Sorry, Chairman, not moving on from vehicles. A bit of information has come in regarding the black BMW. Someone just reported to me now that they have got a registration number and some details regarding tax expiry. So I'll be happy to pass that information on. I don't know if it's the same one that Ken is talking about, but that's just come into me now.
Okay.
Yes, just pass it on via email and we'll have a look. Definitely.
Okay. Can I go on to something else as well that's and the same message regarding antisocial behaviour and nuisance down at Vic Park. The message is that although there's quite a lot of stuff going on down there, people are reluctant to report it because they think actually nothing's going to be done. So as I said, this is coming in from the same person as well.
Yeah. Just on that particular note, and I know I'm pushing the Lancashire Talking again, but if we can, the more people we can get signed up to Lancashire Talking, the more they can feed that into us when they feel there's a problem around Victory Park. But we'll also put messages back on that system to anybody who's signed up for that as an area of interest, and they will actually get the update on anything we do there. We've got to be a little bit careful about some of the information we put out, certainly pre-court case if it comes to that. With juveniles, we've got to be careful. Obviously, we can't identify them individually and we can't name them, but we can give generic results of what we've done. But obviously, they can also feed that back to us. It's an anonymous, not an anonymous system, but it doesn't flag up to anybody else. They're just reporting directly to us. And it just highlights wherever those areas, those issues are. So if everybody can just encourage anybody to sign up to the Lancashire Talking, the more information we get, the more we're able to get back, and the more we can sort of target these areas where people maybe don't want to ring through 1010 or email into the constabulary.
Tim, can I just? I would encourage people to join Lancashire Talking and participate, but the flexibility to comment about issues affecting a particular area are few and far between. There's a survey that you do initially, and then it's sort of like, sort of once every blue moon. So unless I'm missing something, there isn't the ability to report things, or perhaps not report things, but raise issues as a regular feature.
I'll be honest. I haven't used that system, but I'm told, and I'm led to believe that it is a two-way system where individuals who have signed up to it can notify us of particular issues in certain areas. I don't know whether Neil will be able to comment on that anymore.
No, I can't. No.
Okay.
They send the message out what needs to be sent out, but I couldn't tell you any more about it.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'll go into it and see whether I can flag things up. But certainly, it's probably not in the last 3 months, but prior to that, I did interact with it quite a bit. As a resident, you don't get as much input as you perhaps would wish. So,
right.
Yeah. It is two-way, but I think it's like, sort of a single lane against, 6 lanes of traffic coming the other way, if you get me drift. Okay, I've got another issue. Victory Park was picked up in amongst there, but I don't know whether there's anything further to say on that. The other issue that I've got is reports of damage, vehicle damage in the Wormsgate area, and in particular, there's a request for CCTV to be considered to cover the car park at Wormsgate, and if we could note that. I appreciate it's not for the police to install CCTV, and it's probably a request that would be fielded to Van Alswick Town Council now. But if we can make a note of that one, please. And Jane, are you wanting to come back?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, they were just on that subject again. I had noted here there was quite a lot of car keying going on around town. Butts area in Van Alswick is one place. And I think, as you said, Camden Street, Wormsgate, Federation Street areas. Also, there seems to be, I don't know if there's a correlation between what's happening in Van Alswick with this and what's happening in Earby. Because somebody did flag up that there was somebody had his car keyed in Earby. So whether there's some sort of movement between the two towns or what, I don't know, but this seems to have happened before. Thank you.
Okay, any comment from Tim or Neil?
Well, I've personally seen large groups of youths. I've been moving around between Earby and Van Alswick, and obviously they can't be in large groups, so when you approach them, they starburst. So it could be part of that. I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I'm not aware of a huge increase reported to us in car keys, and I do know the one that stands out was a vehicle that had paint stripper poured all over it that was reported, and I think we put that out on social media with the CCTV images, but I'm not aware of a huge increase in car keyings. Whether they're not being reported, I don't know on that one.
Okay.
I haven't seen the crime figures jumping up a huge amount on damage. Where, Neil, in relation to damage for this month, were we up or down?
Crime figures for this month for damage. We've had one. Originally on this form here, it was 0. But the criminal damage I'm dealing with, it's not on these figures, so I've got one being investigated.
Okay, I think as councillors, we'll try and ensure that residents do report any damage that has occurred, and then you know, as was said earlier on in the meeting, that the police are aware. I mean, for anybody that is watching on YouTube, you know, if it isn't reported, as far as the police are concerned, it's invisible, because if it isn't on the system, it's not in front of them, unless they witness it themselves. Jane.
Yes, just on that, person that's getting in touch with me is basically asking, how do they get onto this Lancashire Talking? Is it just via the Lancashire Talking website?
Yeah, you go on to Lancashire Constabulary, and you'll find it there, Lancashire Talking. It's dead easy. And I share with Tim, you know, the urging residents to sign up. Neil.
Yeah, myself and Kevin Dolphin for West Craven, we've been delivering leaflets because we can't door knock because of the pandemic. We're asking people to contact their details to read, and then we'll sign them up on their behalf, or they can go on the website and do it themselves. But we've been to quite a few rows of houses, a few streets. We've got a few more to go yet. But we're hoping, we've delivered hundreds, but we've only had 50 returns, if that, you know. That worked.
Okay. Interesting that you're able to deliver leaflets. You know, the government were banning us from delivering them. Anyway, we'll move swiftly on.
Yes, move on now.
Right. Tim, do you want to make any parting remarks? You've had a good do this evening. It's because we haven't seen you for a few meetings, so I think people have wanted to get value for money. Tim.
Yeah, indeed, and I'm more than happy for any other questions. I think just looking at the crime figures, I think it tells a story in itself, really, for West Craven. That, and I do catch an eye on Nelson's crime figures and Cohen's crime figures, and West Craven is incredibly low. It's an incredibly safe place to live, and I appreciate that there are always going to be small issues, but it almost gladdens me to hear the smaller issues being raised, because if that's what people's concerns, then we don't have a great deal to worry about. But obviously, I do take them all seriously, and it affects people's lives. So we would just continue to say, keep in touch with us. Let us know what your feelings are and what is your burning issues in your area. Report whatever crime you feel. Don't think that nothing is done about it. If we were to just report back, or to report on the social media platforms and other sites like that with everything we did, then unfortunately we'd never actually get a chance to deal with anything itself. So sometimes the public just have to trust that we do things. There's a lot of stuff goes on in the background that we can't always advertise until something happens, usually around drug activity, things like that, and we can only actually advertise it once we've done a strike, arrested somebody, seized, carried out a warrant and seized that amount of drugs. So I would just say, keep faith with us, keep in touch with us, join Lancashire Talking and just report crime. Let us see those patterns, and we'll endeavour wherever possible to report back and let people know what's going on. We're massively now reporting out on, putting messages out on Lancashire Talking about activity that we're carrying out. So it is probably one of the best ways to actually find out what's happening in your local area. And we do tailor it very much to a small area around where things have happened, rather than blanketing everybody. Somebody in Earby doesn't necessarily want to know what's happened on the Colne-Fulridge border. So we will tailor it to those where it should be more of interest to you.
Thank you very much. I don't know what it is that you've said, but I've got Tom and Jane wanted to come back in again. So briefly.
Yeah. I was just trolling about on your website, and neither Tim nor Neil or even PC Dolphin have the pictures up on the Contact Me Local Team page. Just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. What website's that on, Tom? Sorry.
Lancashire.police.uk on the Pendle Division local team section. I think there's Mark Dibb, David Cleal and Matt Lunny have their pictures on.
Yeah, but they're all a lot more photogenic.
But there's there's not a lot of others on there. I just think it'd be nice if you guys.
I think possibly where we had quite a push last year to get all our faces out on and update that. And I think that was just around the time that COVID came in. So it's probably just slipped our mind. I will endeavour to get Neil's face up there straight away. And Kevin, being new to the area, definitely needs to have his face there. And unfortunately, everybody's going to have to suffer my face as well at some point, seeing as how I'm staying in this role now for the next year or so.
Okay, Jane.
Right, so I'm getting quite a lot of information coming through. I'm really sorry about this. Okay, basically, one question: can people get hold of local PCSO directly? I think if you go on the police website, I think I managed to get hold of Neil one time doing that. From memory.
Yes, everything should be on there. Oh.
Sorry, just to answer that one from a more of a sort of policy issue, the only issue with contacting a PCSO or even a neighbourhood police officer directly is it encourages people to circumvent the normal crime recording and information systems. It can hugely clog up the workload of those officers, but it also means that those initial reports, certainly if they're crime related, don't get logged on the system. So we wouldn't necessarily encourage somebody to contact the officer directly. There are ways of recording details. You can ring into the neighbourhood mailbox, which is picked up by Jeff on a regular basis, and he will pass those messages out or reply to them himself. But if it's a crime related, it must go through 101 or 999 if it's an emergency. And we can't really have personal details being given out to members of the public. We obviously the councillors will have our details from time to time, but unfortunately it can't work if we give them out to the general public, unfortunately.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that. Just one other thing, reports coming in about lots of youths doing drug taking on Valley Gardens, and it's been going on for a long time. Is it possible we can get someone to go do a spot check up there, see what's happening?
I'm assuming that's Barn Alswick Valley Gardens, not Airby.
It is, yes. Thank you, Neil.
Would that inform be able to give us any the best times or days of the week? Is this activity happening at weekends, in the evenings, in the night time? Just anything where we can target more specific time rather than turning up 2 or 3 times at the wrong time and then saying, well, we've never seen anything.
They are watching currently as we are online, so I'm sure that will be made available to them, and they'll get back to you with that.
Thank you.
Okay, so that information will be passed on. With that, can I thank Neil and Tim very much for coming along this evening. We have spent quite a long time on this issue, which ordinarily it would have been a lot quicker. But I think council will agree with me that it's time that's been very well spent, and we do appreciate you coming and discussing these issues with us. So thank you very much. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Thanks, Ard.
But if you've got better things to do, we wish you well for the rest of the evening. Thank you. We're going to move on now to our next item, and we haven't got any planning applications, and there were no outstanding planning appeals when the agenda was produced. I'm not aware of any further ones. So we're passing over item 5. Item 6 is a report on enforcement action, and it's an old chestnut where the owners of the former Gospel Mission Hall in Barnoldswick are due to be taken back to court because the notice requiring them to improve the property hasn't been complied with. Could have actually raised this during the police item because the police have been involved in terms of insecurity there, but the property has been resecured and, as far as I'm aware, is still secure, although that information is a few days old, so that could have changed. Can we note that? Yeah, any further comment on it? No, thank you. Item 7 is just a single line report on the capital programme. Is there anything on that one that people want to raise? Nope. Excuse me. Item 8 is reopening of Barnoldswick and Aby town centres, and we did have a brief report emailed round to people the other day, which I'm desperately trying to find, and if anybody else has got it on their machine and they want to put it up on screen, that would be absolutely fantastic. And Tom's looking a bit, sort of cheesed off at this point, and his eyes are popping out. Here we go. Right, so I'm putting this up on screen, and essentially there's, I'm not sure if I've got the right one up now. There's some footfall counts that are being suggested, and they can be extended to West Craven, which will help to provide information for the future. So that's the first thing. There's a request to approve a small spend for public safety messages, posters at shop windows, to increase confidence in shopping in our town centres. You can see that there's a cost there. And I'm not sure if this is the poster that's suggested. There we go. And then there was a further set of suggestions, which for the life of me, I can't find them now.
Chairman, it was dated the 25th of February.
Okay, I will look.
At about 5:30 in the evening, I circulated it to councillors.
25th of February.
I think I've got it, Chair.
Oh, I've got it now. Hey, you're not usurping me. Right. Oh, he's already got it up. Right. Well, can people read that? Is that okay? Tom, do you want to run through this? Because you've actually been discussing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the major thing which we've already discussed at this area committee is the procurement of hand sanitising stations that will be put out by the shops of a morning and taken back in of an evening. I think Mike Williams just wanted a number of shops that were willing to take them on, and I've done a quick survey of the shops that were open at the time, and have a few shops that would be willing to have them. So I think we can green light that because we've already decided it. Let's see. The next thing he wanted was purchase of safety measure banners. I brought up about how the street lighting columns that LCC have aren't up to scratch, and he wanted to request a committee if it would be okay to put them up in Pendle Council-owned car parks. I mean, that's up for us to decide, really. And the last thing was that a website be developed. I mean, elsewhere in the borough, there's ones for Barrowford and Colne. At my request, we said, hang on, let's do West Craven for us, because we've talked before about not splitting Bonalswick and Abbey up and doing it together. I mean, in my opinion, the website's a no-brainer. It'll be free. It would act like a business directory for people to use.
Okay.
I think that's everything.
Thank you very much. So we're talking about the funding that's the European funding, which is quite restrictive in what we can do, and everything that we were suggesting we're getting knocked back on. So there are some suggestions there that we can use. I know there are some suggestions going beyond that about the use of the Pendle Council funding, which is not restricted. And so we'll pick that up in a moment. In terms of the putting banners up on lampposts, I must admit I'm very lukewarm about that, and it's not something that I think is good value for money. And yeah, just don't excite me at all, really. So I've got Rosemary. You want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The website, is there a spelling mistake there? Have you put a 0 or too much on it? 4,000 quid for a website? You've got to be joking, haven't you?
Well, none of us have put any notes on anything because these are not our figures.
I just thought it was a spelling mistake because £4,000 for a website is absolutely ridiculous. I have to say, and I couldn't go along with that. Not at that cost. It's way and above far too much.
Okay, I've got Tom and Ken.
I would like to point out that the website would be entirely funded by the grant, so it wouldn't cost the council anything to produce. Whether 4,000 is right, I think that's just an estimate. Obviously, the real cost will be down or up from that. I don't know. But I mean, in terms of what I think about the price, I think that's if you're paying someone to do it. I mean, that seems like a reasonable expectation to hire a developer. You may laugh, but I think if you were to try and get something produced, you would be looking at that price range either way.
No, can't agree with that, Chair.
Okay. Ken?
Thank you, Chair. And I similarly think that the website is money down the drain. I know it's not our money that we're putting down the drain, but the plethora of websites that you can go on to find out what businesses there are in any area are in the dozens. You know, things like Yell and the local directories, Thompson's, you name it, and some of the areas have their own websites. It's a nice thought, but we do keep coming up with the website ideas. Well, one of the things that worries me is maintenance of those websites. Who's going to do it? Is the town council's going to do it? Are the traders going to do it themselves? Is Pendle Council going to do it? And I would hate to commit either of the town and parish councils or Pendle to upgrading and keeping up to date such a website. And if it isn't up to date, then it's useless. Yeah, I seriously think that it's one that you know we can put on one side straight away, but that's a personal opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mike. Mike, come off mute.
I'm unmuted. Thank you, Chairman. Look, we've all set up and been involved in setting up websites in parish and town councils, and they certainly don't cost £4,000 to set up.
Oh,
however, the issue that Ken raises, I think, is pertinent, and that is, you know, at the moment the parish and town councils have their websites, and somebody is dedicated to keep them up to speed and accurate and everything else, and use them as a notice board throughout. I would have thought there might be the opportunity there to piggyback on the parish and town council's websites by having a notice board available and a directory. But again, it's down to people maintaining the information and keeping them up to date, opening times and everything else. So, you know, I tend to agree with Ken on this one. I think it's a nice sounding thing to do, but somebody who wants to go shopping somewhere, wants to find out the opening times, then okay. A lot of the small businesses already have the information online, or the local pubs and meat, any food shops have that information available. So it seems like a lot of money, and if can we spend it elsewhere in a more worthwhile benefit to all? Just because it's a grant, and I guess you've already said, Chairman, it's a European grant. At the end of the day, doesn't mean to say we should just throw it away. But I'm with Ken on this one.
Okay. Right, well, there doesn't seem to be much enthusiasm to spend £4,000 on a website. Could I suggest that we do explore the opportunities for online presence and see what we can come up with, and you know, perhaps look at, I mean, the report that we had said that Cone's already developed a presence, so we could look at what Cone has done and whether that's worthwhile or not. I think we have had some difficulty because over the previous few months, everything that we've suggested hasn't been eligible for this funding. And we're looking at it the other way, you know, what's eligible and do we want to do it? And we've come up with some hand sanitizers and some posters. And at the moment, I think that's all we're agreed on, which it's difficult to say the least. I was going to suggest, let's progress with what we are agreed on. Let's explore the opportunities that there may be with other things. And I was going to go on to the more, or should I say, the less restrictive funding that's available from the Pendle Council pot that we hold, because we have got some suggestions with that. But Tom, you want to come back in?
Yes, please. The indication that I got from Mike about the amount of hand sanitizer dispensers, he said the number 6, and I think he was sort of expecting me to get the same amount as Nelson. I went out after 4 p.m. in Barnoldswick Town Centre and found 8 shops that would take them without visiting Raynell Road, Frank Street, and indeed Erie. So I'm thinking we'll need a lot more than what he's thinking in terms of what we need. So I think we need to say that we will need probably a dozen more, maybe.
Okay, and Tom, what are the costs on those? You'll excite everybody now, and they'll say, "Oh, we're not spending that much."
If 4 were purchased, that would be a total cost of £800, which is grant funded.
So that's £200 a piece.
Yeah, and the anti-bac liquid would also be covered by the grant, which would be replaced as well, not to the cost of the shopkeepers. Okay.
Right. So are we agreed on that? So we're looking at these are freestanding units that would be put out on the street and people would use, and then respective shopkeepers would take charge of them, put them out in the morning, take them into the shop of an evening so that they were safe overnight. That's the thinking. And the suggestion is between Earbit and Barnoldswick, we do 12. Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. That sounds feasible between the two for 12 there. Just going back on that subject again, did we get anywhere with the face coverings at all? Were we going to look into that or not?
We were, and I've not been meeting Mike. Tom's been talking to Mike Williams, so I looked to Tom. We said we'd have,
I missed the question.
Right, we said a previous meeting. We said that we'd look to have face coverings that people could be provided with.
That didn't come up in our conversation.
Okay, can we look at that then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Moving on to the Pendle Council element of funding. Barnoldswick Town Council's discussed, this was last year, but anticipating reopening and attracting people into the town centres, using the town centres, which obviously were postponed because of the upsurge in the epidemic, and the general thrust of the discussions were to do with having low-key events and activities, providing space on the town square with tables and chairs for people to use. So the suggestion is to use some of the Pendle funding for the purchase of said equipment. Jane?
Sorry, Chairman, that was an old hand there.
Okay. Do you want to speak on that proposition?
Right, let me get my notes. I was looking at that earlier on. 1 second then. So yeah, I was kind of looking into what could be done, and quite a lot of what could be done we've kind of already covered really locally, such as widening the pavements and free parking. So we did talk at one point about looking at maybe supplying some gazebos for the shop fronts. When the weather's not too good, it gives more space outdoors there. And regarding the tables and chairs, if we were thinking that maybe available for anybody to use, so they could go into a particular takeaway, cafe, whatever, and then go sit outside and enjoy whatever it is that they've bought there, socially distance if it needed to be. I did think about free Wi-Fi for town centres. Thinking what could we offer that maybe not many places do locally, and I don't know whether that's achievable or what, I don't know. Regarding something, a themed event, we could have maybe something on the lines of arts and craft stalls, voluntary group stalls, entertainment, music, dance, farmers markets, things like that, and maybe an opening day event as soon as lockdown ends. There's a whole host of manner of things we could do in relation to the town square, and coming out of lockdown, it just needs kind of finer detail on where we want to go with it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the event side of it is probably town council related rather than this area committee. But in terms of the hardware, certainly we can support the provision of and tables and chairs for the use of people using local cafes in a safe and COVID secure fashion. Have we got general agreement on that? Looking round me, people are nodding yes, either enthusiastically or not, as the case may be. I've got a nodding cat as well. Very enthusiastic it is. Okay, is there anything further on this item?
Chairman, can I just ask for clarification on the posters? Did you want to go ahead with that item that Mike Williams was asking about? That was with using the ERDF funding.
Yes. Yeah. I don't get terribly excited, but I do agree with it. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it was just on the free Wi-Fi side. I mean, obviously Pendle owns the square, so it would be within their remit. I think it's something we should do, and use that opening the town square area committee money to set up that as well.
Okay. Mike? Unmute.
Thank you, Jay. I think the Wi-Fi is a brilliant idea, but if you remember the last time we looked at this, we were talking about a considerable amount of money just to set it up in Barlick or whatever, around associated round the square. I think we were talking about over £100,000 at one stage.
I think other prices have certainly come down since then. You can you could do it for well under £1,000. Depending on your range of your Wi-Fi. I mean, if it's just a square, you can do it relatively cheaply.
If you can do it for £500, we'll all have it.
Well, you might need to get full fibre broadband first.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Joanne was asking about the posters. I mean, I'm not overly enthusiastic, but I think that's a yes. Nodding assent if you think so, yeah. In terms of the banners, I was suggesting a no. In terms of website or online presence, that there's some further work done, but that we're not interested in the £4,000 a pop that Mike Williams was suggesting. And then as far as the Pendle Council funding is concerned, that we agree in principle to the purchase of tables and chairs for use on the reopened town square. Yeah. Okay, Jane?
Just quickly on that, where would we store them?
Look, can we just deal with the details outside the meeting? In a minute, we'll say what colour do we want them to be. And I think that, you know, there are some things that we're just best getting on with. Ken?
Thank you, Chair. Within the scope of both the European funding and our own funding, I remember days a few years ago when a lot of people, particularly people sitting in the chair, spent a lot of time putting Barlick Market posters around the approach roads to Barnoldswick. Is there any scope, do you think, in renewing those to focus on town centres and putting them on the approach roads to Barlick and Earby and West Craven in particular?
Okay.
As a
Well, don't forget we've got the environmental services manager sat in this meeting.
and
he'd be the person to initiate prosecution of people for fly posting. So whoever put those roadside boards up, I have no idea.
Well, we would have no idea who put the new ones up about the town centre either, would we?
Yeah, but we're perhaps best not discussing it in a committee meeting that's going to be on YouTube forever and a day and could be using evidence.
In that case, I withdraw my suggestion, Chairman.
If there's any need for any guerrilla advertising, you know, perhaps we consider it in other quarters. Yeah, is that all right? Joanne, just going back, we did mention the face coverings, so we want to explore those.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can we move on? Can we move on to item 9? And item 9, we've got just 3 items, and I will pick up the further item on the water supply on Gisborne Road in amongst this one. So the first one that I've asked that we discuss, I'm going to put pictures up on. So the first one that we discuss is concerning the foul sewage surcharging on Salterforth Road at Earby. And the first picture that I've got there is from, I think it was the 1st of November, taken by Councillor Tom Whip, when he and I did a tour of the area when we had heavy rain at the beginning of November. And committee has seen this picture before because we put it up on screen as part of a short presentation about flooding issues on that occasion. And subsequently, committee did agree to get onto Yorkshire Water about the issues of the surcharging, which you can see here principally, and then a little bit there as well. But on occasions, we've had a handful of lids spurting up like that on Salterforth Road. And the reason why it's back on the agenda tonight is that following November incident, we had the problem with the road erupting further down Salterford Road, and there's some damage further on here as well. And foul sewage was coming out of there, all of which indicated, I think I'm going in the right direction, that the problem persisted. And here we have the situation 2 or 3 weeks ago where the sewage is continuing to surcharge, and we have all this debris, the toilet tissue and the other stuff running down the road, which is an absolute disgrace, and a different view of that problem there. So I know councillors, several councillors have been on to Yorkshire Water about this, including myself. I am not convinced that they've actually dealt with the prime problem there, which is, too small a sewer, or a constriction on the sewer, or a blockage on the sewer. I do know that before some of the pictures that I've put up on screen were taken, that there had been a couple of days previously and jetted the sewer. And given that this is a long-standing issue, we've raised several occasions, I thought the best thing that we could do, besides the individual representations that we've been making, is to commit it to resolve that Yorkshire Water takes effective action to resolve the problem of surcharging sewers on Salterford Road at Earby, and that we have a report back as soon as possible as to what action they have taken or are taking. So I would move that. Ken, I've got you, and then I've got Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps I agree totally and second the suggestion there that we communicate with Yorkshire Water about the problems here and remind them that there is a further development which has already been approved and must be starting imminently, which has got to connect to that particular sewer line, which is farther up Salterford Road on the edge of the ranch estate on the left-hand side as you approach Salterford, and that there is a planning application for the right-hand side as well for a second development, which is going to increase the number of properties that sewer has to service by a considerable number of houses. Thank you, Chair.
Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you're quite right. Obviously, this has been going on for a number of years, nearly, from what I can gather. I got involved at the beginning of February when we had going down the road as well. And you're right. There's a number of people have reported it. Gareth, our own engineer, has been involved in talking with Yorkshire Water over the subject, and clearly the thing that worries us all, and we've been going on about this for some time. I still marvel at how the sewerage manages to get over the hill from the bottom end of Salterford to down to Earby. But yes, Ken's absolutely right. We have got pending now a number of increased dwellings that are going to be pumping into this into this system, and clearly there is something definitely wrong with it. Whether it's an obstruction or whether, I think you even said yourself, Chairman, that there could be some subsidence involved lower down. It clearly needs to be sorted, and we do need to keep the pressure on Yorkshire Water, because our experience of Yorkshire Water, particularly in dealing with issues around Irby, has not been good at the best of times. So yeah, I would fully support that. It is a worrying situation, and you know, it can only get worse. It is my response. I would totally agree with Ken's comments and your own. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Is there agreement across the committee on taking that action? Yeah. Thank you very much. Moving on, and I'll put another couple of pictures up in terms of this next item. This is one of the junctions of, well, I'll call it back Kenilworth Drive. This is Kenilworth Drive here. That's the pavement line, and this is the road that serves the parking areas to the rear of the properties on there, and that's the other end. And you can see that in both cases, where the pavement line crosses the junction, there are these big defects. And I've got involved after residents contacted me, reporting that the County Council weren't interested, and the County Council was saying that the road, the back street as it were, wasn't adopted. Now, to my mind, these defects are in the highway of Kenilworth Drive, so they need sorting out. The wider question of the adoption of these roads, whether they adopt this road or whether it is adopted or not, is a bit of a moot point, because my belief is very strongly that it is, or it should be, and that it should be maintained at public expense. As you can see, the nature of the carriageway is such that, you know, it's to a high standard, it's properly curbed, and the construction is okay. I think that the reality is that should have an adopted status and should be maintained by the Highway Authority at public expense. So the purpose of having this on the agenda tonight was to agree that we should ask that the status of this road be investigated and correctly recorded by the County Council as adopted highway. And again, I mean, I'll move that. Mike.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. I've been involved in this since January, when a resident, the father of a resident on this on Wenk, contacted me. Referenced it was a lot of snow there at that time, and he'd been visiting his daughter and managed to fall down one of those potholes. I went on, similar to you, went on to county and noted that it was declared as unadopted. I also thought there may well be a way through it, certainly at the two entrances to the rear of Wentcliffe Drive, as the footpath goes across that actual area. So there could be a point there. I've also contacted the Together Housing Group to see if they've got any residual responsibility for that rear area, because obviously we have a mixture of social housing on there and indeed private properties, to see if that might be a route through. I'm still waiting to hear back from their estates manager to clarify that area, the parking area, and indeed the grassed area. I was hoping to have a response back when I noted you'd put it on the agenda. So there's that side of it as well. And also the grassed area is being maintained and cut on a regular basis. I know there's lighting on that rear street as well, Chairman. So, you know, a lot of the points you're making are viable in terms of having adopted. But of course, to do that, I'm not 100% certain, but we would we not need the agreement of all the residents that are on that rear area? And is it possible that some of their red lines, in terms of the properties that have been purchased, would take some responsibility for it as well? But other than that, as I say, I'm waiting for clarification from the Together Housing Group. I doubt that. I think I'm expecting them to come back and say it's nothing to do with us. But we've had similar areas of not as big as this in parts of Earby, where they have actually come and patched the roads in front of their properties and left the private ones all alone. So it would be interesting if I do get a clarification, I'll circulate it to the committee. But yes, it certainly is an area that we need some clarification on, because it's just going to deteriorate further and further. And it's not just at the entrance to that rear. If you go and look at it in detail, you'll find that there's plenty of other breakdowns along the road surface, from one end to the other, as well. So yeah, I would support that move, but we might get a solution from the Together group. I'm not holding any a positive area in there. I think they're going to turn around and say it's not to do with us. But there, it's worth checking.
Thank you very much for that. Before your time, there was a legal ruling about roads on housing estates, and this was, when they were still part of local authorities, and they were deemed to be adopted, and I think that applies in this case. I don't think it'll take a lot of checking to establish that that's the case. Persuading Lancashire County Council that it's the case may be the more formidable objection. So I thought we'd get it discussed and backed by the area committee, so that we can get the eager legal beavers at Pendle Council putting the case forward, rather than just our own voices. So are there any further comments? Are we all agreed on that one? Thank you. So next one, and this is an example of several that we have had in recent months, and it's the problems that we've had with street lamps that have been unlit for some considerable time. Now, as far as I'm aware, well, all the ones that I know about have been resolved, but there may well be ones, and they all seem to be, there's groups of them, and this is the one that I put up. It's on School Lane at Earby, where Peter will be familiar with this one, but there's a whole group there of street lamps that are out. I mean, the County Council's website was saying they'd be completed. It's my understanding that these were electrical faults, so several lamps were out in an area because the supply was affected, and it's that issue about the electric supplies being repaired that I think committee should make a resolution about. We have done previously, and at one point we had a table thumping meeting with managers from, at the time it was Northern Power Grid, might have been even their predecessor, and I think we want to make some representations to ensure that Northern Power Grid do deal with multiple street lamps being out as a matter of priority, rather than being left for many weeks. I say this is an example. There were several lamps on Colne Road in Earby, and there was a group of lights out on Courts Lane, St Mary's Avenue, Fenton Avenue in Barnoldswick. So 3 sets of examples there of where this has happened, and we need to be making representations to ensure that it doesn't continue to occur. Would committee support making representations to Northern Power Grid? Peter? You're not muted, Peter, but you're not coming over. I'm afraid we're still not hearing you. I don't know where your voice has gone. Suggestion that you unplug your earphones. Unplug them from the machine rather than your ears. Right, well, before we descend into Handforth Parish Council territory, can I get can you signify, Peter, your agreement or otherwise to the proposal that I'm putting, either by nodding vigorously or shaking your head? Nodding vigorously, right, okay. Well, we'll have to take that sign language as your contribution to that item. Okay. Can we move on to the 4th item on this now, which is the issue of the water down Gisborne Road? And again, I'll put up an image, and members of the committee who've been on a long time will recall that there is a block of properties on Gisborne Road, Barnoldswick, between Brogden View and Brogden Lane, who have had terrible problems with the water pressure, and big do's and little do's. Yorkshire Water said, no to do with us, you've got a joint supply pipe, and you need to renew the joint supply pipe. And residents have acted. They've got a contractor in to do that. The contractor has begun work today, I think, dug the hole and found that the pipe that comes from the Yorkshire Water supply to the joint supply pipe joint water pipe is only a 1-inch pipe, and it's not adequate for the 8 properties that it serves. And even if they put a new joint water pipe in on a bigger one, then the inadequacy of the Yorkshire Water pipe would mean that they don't get any improvement in the water flow and pressure. So I said, well, I'll raise it at the committee tonight, not that we can do anything directly about it, but we can make representations to Yorkshire Water on the residents' behalf and ask that they replace the length of pipe between the end of the joint water pipe and the main. And the water main is just beyond these barriers here. It's only probably less than 3 meters, maybe even 2 meters. Tom looked at it, so he might have an idea about that. But if we can do this as a matter of urgency, it would certainly help the people down there to solve a problem that has been dogging them for several years. I've got Jane, and then I've got Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd be happy to second that. Lack of water pressure is it can be a bit of a nasty problem. So if we can get on with that and make representations to Yorkshire Water, that would be great.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I'd be happy to second that. Definitely, yeah.
Lovely. thank you very much. No further discussion. We're all in agreement with that. Lovely. Thank you. Item 10, we've got a couple of outstanding items, which I'm suggesting that we note. We really do want to get a meeting set up with Transdev at the earliest opportunity to discuss the issues that we have with them. And Joanne Banoswick Town Council discussed this and agreed that they would muscle in on the West Craven Area Committee meeting with Transdev so as to support the representations that are being made. Okay, item 11, this is where we say goodbye to the live stream. Unfortunately, due to GDPR, we cannot discuss some issues in public that we used to discuss in public, and it's because of the disclosure of exempt information, which is likely to reveal the identity of an individual. And also we've got an item about litigation, which could be prejudicial to the outcome of any court case. So would somebody move that?
I move that, Chair.
Thank you very much. And seconded. You don't need to say, Tom, how, like you don't agree with it.
I'll second that with the proviso that I don't like it, and
okay.
Everybody knows as I've already said it. But
all right, thank you very much. Right, so thank you to anybody that's been watching. We'll close down the live stream. I'll just pause a moment to make sure that that's happened.